In 1966, Hans Holzer, the famous ghost hunter, visited a house at 38 Merrill St, Plymouth, New Hampshire, in the United States. The owners at the time were Seth and Eleanor Fuller, who described to Hans the strange things they'd been witnessing at their house. Their first strange event happened in the middle of June 1965 and was about 1 month after they'd moved in. Eleanor was in the kitchen preparing supper, and as she had placed some potatoes on the table, she swung around from the kitchen sink and was facing the bathroom. She saw someone standing in the bathroom, and it was certainly not her husband. The man was wearing a brown plaid shirt, dark trousers and suspenders. He wore glasses with round metal frames. He was of medium height, with a solid build, with a roundish face, and he was smiling. Then he abruptly vanished from view. Her second unusual event happened when she could hear footsteps around the house. For example, if she was upstairs, the footsteps would be downstairs, and if she was in the kitchen, the footsteps would be in the living room. This would happen constantly in the daytime, 2 or 3 times a day, and for some weird reason, it only happened on sunny days. Late one night, her and an elderly relative who stayed with them, called Seth, heard a door shut upstairs. She went upstairs to check on her 2 children, but they were fast asleep. Her husband was also sound asleep, and his door was already shut. It didn't sound like a door slamming from the wind, but there were no windows open and no breeze that could have caused the door to slam shut, just the latch clicking in place. On the next occasion, her 3-year-old daughter Becky Sue was in bed and around midnight called to her mother, "What were you doing in my room?" She continued to call out to her mother until her mother came in and said that she was not in her room, and then turned around and saw a woman in a long white nightgown standing in front of her bedroom door before heading to the hallway and abruptly vanishing, just like the man in the suspenders and glasses. Meanwhile, her daughter continued to ask what she was doing in her room. Realizing that her daughter would be terrified if she insisted that she was not in her room, said that she'd forgotten what she wanted and to go back to sleep. But at the same time, she could hear footsteps in the hallway, and they were not her other daughter Kim or her husband's. One afternoon, her husband was helping her make the beds upstairs, and they could hear footsteps coming in from the playroom to the kitchen and then into the hall. They thought it was Becky Sue, but everything was quiet and they waited for her to call out. When they finally went downstairs to see what was happening, they found nobody there. As there was snow outside, there were no signs of any snowy footprints. Like before, it was sunny outside, just like the other occasions when the footprints appeared. Late at night, at around 11 p.m, she was preparing her husband's lunch when all of a sudden she heard a step right behind her. It really frightened her, and up until that time, none of the previous incidents had particularly scared her. Maybe on this occasion it was because it was directly behind her, and she was too scared to turn around and feared what she may encounter. She did some research on previous owners and came to the conclusion that the man she first saw in the bathroom was probably a man by the name of Woodbury Langdon, and after asking the neighbours for his description, it fitted the man she first saw in the bathroom. One other member of the family who was affected by the strange entity was their black cat. Whenever it ran up the stairs, it would abruptly stop at the top of the stairs and would just sit there and stare at an empty space before walking away. On other occasions, he would stand in the bathroom door and refuse to go in. On many occasions, he would sit in the hallway and just stare up at the stairs and would not move a muscle before slowly walking away. What was he looking at? It is well known that animals have heightened abilities to detect subtle changes in energy or vibrations that humans cannot. On August 12, 1967, Hans Holzer and psychic Ethel Elliott, along with a tape recorder and camera, visited the house to find out who the main culprit was in the hauntings. Ethel went up the stairs first and stopped at the bedroom on the right and said, I get an older woman wearing glasses and a man wearing a funny hat. The man appeared to be from the early 1800s. She then reached a cold spot and sensed that its origins were of psychic nature. Ethel was asked to describe the woman. She's lying down and she senses a pain in her chest and her eyes are closed. As Ethel continued walking, she felt a sudden pain in her left shoulder. She's here with me and looking at me. She tells Ethel to go left, but Ethel now has difficulty walking. She's now taking on the symptoms of the woman. As they were descending down the stairs, Ethel was starting to feel like an old woman and had trouble with the stairs. Ethel believes that the woman had fallen down the stairs and started coughing. It appears that Ethel had now been possessed by a very sick old woman. As they guided Ethel to a chair, she immediately went into a trance where her face appeared distorted, as if in pain, and she began to talk with a feeble voice, followed by a series of grunts and sighs. No sooner had this occurred when a man entered into Ethel's body, who was very emotional, and called out Sylvia, who was obviously the woman she'd been clairvoyantly experiencing earlier. He said, "You see me, don't you?" And I said, "I loved everyone. I'll go. I won't bother you." Ethel was assisted by a spirit guide, Albert, who said the man's name was Henry McClellan. He lived around 1810 to 1820. There is a woman connected to the house and is buried here somewhere, and he is looking for her. He says that he has a daughter called Maisie, who was 18 in 1798 and had been wronged, and there was a feud between the family and another family called McDern. The man then said, "It is futile. The problem is my own. My name is Henry, and I was born here." He believes the year is 1813, and he is 47. His son was John Stuart McDermott, who served in Ticonderoga. Ticonderoga is a hamlet in Essex County, New York. It is interesting to note that Fort Ticonderoga was of strategic importance during the 18th century colonial conflicts between Great Britain and France, and played an important role during the American Revolutionary War. Henry then said, "My daughter went missing, but he found the bones buried close by, but I have her with me." He knew he was not on the earth plane, but was occasionally drawn to the house. He was asked not to disturb those now present in the house, especially the children. He was asked whether he was aware it was no longer 1813, and a long time has passed. He was not aware of it. He was asked whether it was his land and house, where he replied, yes, he owned it and built it. He was told that 150 years had passed since his death, and it was time for him to move on. Ethel then exorcised him by saying, "Go from this house in peace and with our love." As for the footsteps, unfortunately for the family, they continued, and their 7-year-old daughter Becky Sue was still being haunted by them.